If you like firearms and freedom content, be sure to leave a like. It really helps the algorithm tremendously for YouTube, and especially with this type of content, which, you know, all social media companies hate. And be sure to subscribe, because I'll be releasing quite a few videos. I have quite a few on the way right now, doing a series right now on a gun build. So, again, this is not a gun build video. I know I said I was doing that series, but a couple things came up. Obviously the Fiachi video. Fiachi is sending me things to review, so I figure I get those out. And Shooter Lube sent me free Shooter Lube to review, which is super amazing that they'd be willing to help out a small channel like this one and just give me stuff to review that I wouldn't necessarily be able to afford otherwise. So today I'm going to be going over basically how to clean a gun. There's a lot of controversy around these topics. I'm going to be doing a very basic clean. I actually just cleaned this recently too, so it's not going to be very dirty. I'm just going to be going over concepts, and while I do that, I'm going to be reviewing Shooter Lube. So let's get right into it. This is a Glock 23 with a 9mm conversion barrel. If you don't know why, I would recommend going and checking out my handgun videos. But it's got the TLR7 on it too, so if you have a threaded barrel, obviously you know you have to unscrew the thread cover before you can go ahead and take it off. You want to make sure your gun is clear. I recommend racking it, even racking it a few times. I usually look into it, make sure there's no casing stuck in the barrel, make sure there's no casing stuck anywhere in there, and then I even still go ahead and rack it a few times. The best way I found to actually take apart the Glock is to take this hand, the hand that usually you put on first, that you pull the trigger with, and just wrap your fingers around the top of it like that and pull it back just a little bit. And now you're going to have these little, what are they called? Like slide things here on either side. Take your index and your thumb and just pull them down and then release the slide with these fingers. And now it's primed and ready for you to take the slide off. You have to pull the trigger here, which is why it's so important to make sure it's clear and safe. Pull the trigger, and now the slide is released. You just pull it right off. So we got the frame on the bottom, slide on the top. You have the spring here. You can just compress it a little bit and pull it out. Barrel, you just lift it up and pull it out. And that's basically it. The Glock is very simple. Now, this video I'm using a Glock. This is going to be, the concepts I show here are going to be by and large every firearm that I can imagine being able to clean. And this is how I basically open up any firearm to clean, and I think you're going to find success with it. So I'm just going to make a mess here. Shooter Lube also sent me this rag here. I'm just going to use this for today. I'm not going to use any wire brushes or anything, but if you have a lot of carbon buildup, you can use a wire brush. But I know operators and fast gun runners that don't even clean their firearms. They just oil it. So like I said, I cleaned this recently. It's still got some carbon in here, and it's got brand new oil. So we'll see what the stage 1 solvent. It says military grade weapons and cleaning solvent stage 1. So you got the stage 1, which is the solvent, stage 2, which is the oil. Comes with the spray bottle, which I really like. I've never actually had a spray bottle before. I used to just use the Walmart like compressed cans. So you're gonna spray it in basically anywhere that carbon could get. I usually just spray it liberally along the entire slide on the inside. Sometimes I'll do the outside of the slide too, just to make sure it looks nice and good, you know, keep corrosion away and shit like that. But you're going to want to get anywhere there's carbon, anywhere you see any corrosion. If you see corrosion, I recommend a wire brush. If the carbon doesn't seem to be coming off, I recommend a wire brush. But if you have a pretty clean gun and you clean it pretty often, you don't really need to do that. I mean, even if you don't clean it very often, I clean them every couple hundred rounds, and I can still get it all off. Now this thing's bone dry now. There's no oil or anything. It took it all off. I mean, cleaning is basically pretty straightforward. You're going to spray the solvent, make sure there's no corrosion, rust, carbon buildup, dirt. You know, that's straightforward. I think the problem people usually have with cleaning a gun is the actual oiling part, and they don't know what parts to oil, so we'll get into that in a minute. So as far as the Shooter Lube goes, that's actually, I don't even know if you'd need a wire brush for a lot of it, unless you're trying to get into some small areas, but that's probably the cleanest I've ever seen my Glock. I'm not gonna lie to you, and they're not paying me to say good things either. They sent me this and told me to just review it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm not being paid by Shooter Lube. I'm not sponsored by Shooter Lube. But again, I was using Walmart grade equipment before this, so I probably have a low bar of expectation, but still, this is pretty amazing. Gonna do the spring next. The spring's not too important to clean and lube, but you don't want carbon buildup staying in the spring, and then when it actually compresses, shooting carbon all over your gun. That's just not a good day. So it's good to just wipe it down. Sometimes you might want to get in there and clean with a wire brush, but again, it's not too important. The barrel is what's actually sliding through your actual slide. So you want to make sure you get that nice and clean, and we'll show you how to lube it up here in a minute. For the inside of the barrel, that is where, the gunpowder is being burnt, so it's going to be dirtier. I know people use brushes and stuff to get in there and buy kits and stuff. I usually just like to wrap up the towel and then sift it through there, because you find a lot comes out of that. And the barrel of the gun is probably going to be one of the faster things you're going to have to replace as the gun gets older. So it's not the most important thing to keep spotless, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that's a basic clean. Obviously, cleaning is really straightforward. And then you have the frame. I just usually clean down the metal components. Anything that moves, anything that rubs on something, you don't want carbon getting stuck in there and getting grainy, or dirt getting stuck in there. You want everything to just function properly, but this isn't too much. This isn't too hard. You just spray it, wipe it down, use a wire brush if you really want to get in there. That's the cleaning. Cleaning's pretty straightforward. That's not what people usually have an issue with, but we'll get into oiling now. But my final thoughts on the solvent. This is probably what I'm going to use as long as they're in business at this point, because this, you saw, I used literally just the rag they gave me. That's like the rag that they give you with glasses. And it took everything off. All the oil that I had put on it, any leftover carbon that I didn't get last time, it's just all gone. So I actually really like that. This is the least amount of effort I've ever had to put into cleaning the gun. So that actually really says something for me on Shooter Lube. And again, I'm not being paid to say these things about them. They told me to just review the product. We'll get into the stage 2, the oil. Now this looks like pretty just standard oil. I'm obviously not going to be using it in functions. I'm not going to be torture testing it today. So I'm not going to be able to very well review and Duratest this oil, but I will tell you what I think about how it feels. Gave me this cover too for the oil. I'm not sure. It's like a needle. I'm not sure what you need the needle for. I don't know. Maybe just to put smaller dabs on, but the way I oil the guns, I just usually like to have the standard cap on it. So we'll get right into it. The first thing I'm going to oil is the slide. And the philosophy for oiling that I use, that you can basically use on any firearm, is wherever you know for sure that metal contacts metal, right? Something's moving, the slide is sliding against something else that's metal, and wherever you see wear. So wherever you know something's contacting, obviously it needs to be oiled, and then wherever you see wear, which means something is contacting that you might not know. So we see wear all down this middle line. I know the slide's going to be sliding across the frame on these little rails on the side here, so I'm going to oil those parts. And now the amount of oil you want is a very, very little amount. So I don't know if you can see that, I put a little bit here, and that is actually too much, but I always put a little too much on purpose so I can get it with my finger, wipe it down, get a nice thin coat. You want it to be a nice thin coat. You don't want it to be a thick coat. You don't want to put too much on there, because then it's just going to trap more dirt. Like I said, you want to keep dirt and carbon away from there. So I'm putting it on the rails on the side right now, putting a little bit on the bottom. I see some wear in here, so I'm just going to get it in there on the sides. And that looks about good. I'm not going to worry about this section right here, even though metal does touch there. And the reason is, this is another thing that goes for all guns. I know that I'm going to oil the barrel. and that is where the barrel slides. So I don't want to oil this, put a layer of oil here, and put a layer of oil on the barrel, because that is going to be too much oil. So I'm going to call that finished with the slide right now, and move on to the barrel. Again, same philosophy wherever you know metal touches. So I know that the barrel is going to slide in these areas, and in this area, and then wherever you see wear. So I see wear around a ring right here, and I see wear down here. So I'm going to be oiling this part. Same thing, I'm probably just going to put oil in one general area, a little bit too much for that area, and then take it with my finger and spread it into the other places that I need it, so it just kind of thins out as I go along. I recommend leaving the side that actually shows when it's in the slide pretty bare with oil. If you're going to put some, put the least amount in that area, because that's where the most dirt is going to get to. And if you oil the other areas, you're not really going to have a problem with getting movement and cycling, because you didn't oil that part. You know, if everything else is well oiled, you don't need to really expose the part that's going to get dirty to too much more oil. I actually did put a little bit too much on the barrel part here, so I'm just gonna dab it. Make sure there's still a thin coat. Looks good. And you should be able to pick this up and feel that it's oily, and maybe get a little bit of oil on your hands if you're picking this up. But nothing, it should not be drenched at all. You shouldn't put it down on the table and then pick it up and you see an oil spot. That's the golden amount of oil in my opinion. So I'm just gonna put this back in there. The spring, I don't oil the spring. I don't know anyone who does oil the spring. So you just put the spring back in there. And then the frame, I already oiled everything that the frame is going to touch on the slide. So we just put that back on. And to reassemble the Glock, all you do is start here in the front, slide it on, and rack it. And it is reassembled. We'll put the thread cover back on here. And I recommend, once you clean it, rack it a few times, rack it a bunch. You want to get that oil nice and spread out. You want to see if any oil is coming out the seams. You don't want your gun leaking, obviously. Any leftover oil that's on my fingers, I'll usually put, because it's not even going to stay on the outside of the gun, but it just helps with keeping corrosion off of your firearm. And that looks pretty good. Shooter Lube overall, I think this is to stay. I haven't actually looked at their prices, obviously. Like I said, they just sent me this stuff. So definitely would recommend. I don't know the price point, obviously. I'll probably link their website. I would say if it's around a $30 price point, definitely be worth it. They send you enough lube and solvent to make it worth it for around the $30 mark. So that's what I would value this at, obviously without knowing the price myself. Good product. If it's around the $30 mark, when I run out of this stuff, if they don't send me more, I will definitely be purchasing it again. So thank you to Shooter Lube. If you like this video and you like freedom and firearms content, please like this video and subscribe. It really helps out the algorithm, especially with this type of content. All my social media is at Denzer Infinite. If you like gaming, my gaming channel is linked below. I release videos there pretty sparsely because I have higher priorities like this channel and my day job, but I do my best to release them as often as possible over there. So thanks.